kaiju story for a kaiju anthology that's coming out. I've never written a kaiju story. I decided I wanted to write about a giant cat. But again, it was one of those situations where, I mean, I'd done some brainstorming with Steve, but I didn't exactly know what the story was going to be. And it's literally due on February 1st. So there's a little bit of that panic that sets in. And my hack for when I have to write a short story and I don't really have an idea is to dig into, like, deep into the trunk. Like trunk stories, those stories. Literally for me, that means stories I wrote when I was a kid or stories that are about my family. Like it happened with the Out There Screaming story for Jordan Peele's anthology. I'll just write about my mother and my aunt in the civil rights movement, and that was where the story came from. This one has kind of a unique twist because it's kaiju, which is already, come on, that's already a little bit hard to believe. I decided to go back to the trunk of maybe 9, 10-year-old me. And I remembered that when I was a kid, I wrote a series of short stories. It started with one called Chris Manning and His Talking Cat. And I said, wouldn't it be amazing if I could pay homage to 9, 10-year-old Tananarive and resurrect not just her title, but her character of Chris Manning and whatever I could remember of the cat. And yet, last night while I was working on it, I remembered the cat's name. The cat's name was Midnight. So I am using every scrap of memory I can to piece together this. Yeah, actually, there's Midnight sitting right behind me on the bed. But it will have more of my son's cat's personality. We have a cat named Ginger whose personality will be more Midnight's personality. But how does the talking cat become a giant cat? You'll have to read the story to find out. But aside from a moment of panic, you know how it is. This isn't working. This isn't working. Oh, why can't I ever write a good story for this editor? This isn't working. Oh my God, the voices. The voices were overpowering. Like the voices were telling me to scrap it, start over again. Screw that story I wrote when I was a kid. You need to be a grown-up now. But after a good writing session last night, I am happy I went with my instincts to go deep because it is starting to pour out. And I'm really proud of myself. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of applause for that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. How about you, darling?
Okay, so before I go in here, I want to know something about you. So you had all these different assignments, you had these different deadlines, and then suddenly I died. Okay, and uh, you were hovering. My heart stopped. They had to bring me back once or twice, and all this good stuff. How did you keep going forward? How did you keep your balance? How did you not curl up in a ball?
To say that it was me would actually be a bit of a misnomer because I met a personality I had not had the opportunity to meet before that I call Tananarive 2.0. And Tananarive 2.0 is that person who's like, I've got this. Okay, I often say because I have this deep fear of mortality myself, that the person who's kind of facing that end of life moment won't be me exactly. It'll be the person I've become after I've been through either an illness or a moment where I realize, oh no, this is it. Like you become someone else. So in part, it was Tananarive 2.0 who got through, who was able to find a way to sleep at night. But in terms of what she used, it was, the old standards, walking every day, guided meditation on my Calm app, just 10 minutes in the morning with Tamara. Shout out to Tamara at Calm. Every day. Music when I could bring myself to even feel enough joy to want to play music, which was rare. I think I played my drums once, maybe twice when I accompanied a show, but I wasn't accessing my drumming from a place of joy. It was just something I knew I needed to do to try to get rid of some of the stress. And it's interesting. I was able to do some writing. Like I remember at one point, my cousin Monko was here, and he's a former paramedic, and he's a snowboarder, and he had some area, and he knows guns better than I do. So he had some areas of expertise that were helpful with my upcoming novel. So we had one session I remember in the emergency room waiting room where I was going through the manuscript trying to get input from him, but it was very hard. So I say this to say this. Writing is not always going to be there for you. I'm sorry to break it to you. I am someone who has always believed that writing could save me from any distraction in the outside world. And Steve's health issue taught me that was not the case. I felt like when I tried to go back to the novella, I remembered so vividly being in flow before Steve got sick. I'd written a big chunk. I was really excited. And then I went back to it and it was like the fire had gone out. I had written a note to myself about what should happen next, and I literally didn't understand the note. It was like a different person trying to come and finish working on it. And I tried to use the sentence a day technique, and maybe I did, I don't know every day, but I certainly was trying to eke out a sentence. But you know the difference between when you feel like you're just typing and when you're in flow and when you're creating and when it really is sort of liberating and it really is something that pulls you out of the moment. I could not access that when you were ill, but it was the other stuff. It was regularly working out, walking. And part of my workouts are dance. I probably did that a couple times. It was just going on faith that if and remembering to eat, even though I had no appetite. So just sort of the routines and the programs I had set for myself
The
really
routine.
got me through. I knew that's what you were going for.
No, yeah. Well, no, it actually, I was going to just hear because it was always possible that you'd say something I hadn't heard before, because
Okay.
you often do. But what came out of that that I think is immediately applicable is I'm very happy that I'm seeing more discussion on success sites, self-improvement sites, on shift away from goals, shift to the systems, the routines that would accomplish the goals. See, if you have a goal, your goal might not be achievable for 3 years. I want to graduate medical school, but or 5 years, whatever the heck it is. But if you build a system where it's every day, if I do this, I will be taking a step towards that. That you focus on what is it I can do today in this 24-hour period that keeps me on the path. So if I've got a book to write and this to turn in and that to turn in, then by dividing the amount of time between today and when it's due into 365 units, this is what I have to do every day to be finished by then. Then all you have to do is, am I keeping, commit to it, and then did I keep my word? Did I do what I said I was going to do today? Now, if you set goals at the beginning of the year, most people will abandon them by halfway through January. And if they don't, then they often don't look at their goals again until next December or next January, at which time they realize, oh my God, I got off track. By May, I was completely off track. I forgot all about that goal.
And I just can I jump in?
Oh,
Will
please do.
you keep your train of thought if I say something?
Yeah,
You may
I'm fine.
remember this from earlier in our marriage, but I used to be averse to writing down goals, because I didn't want to face the disappointment of not having met them. Which is nuts because actually I met you as the result of writing down my goals of what I wanted in a partner. And I considered it like a magical incantation and I knew it worked. But when it came to bigger goals, like with my writing, with my career, with breaking into Hollywood, I was actually afraid to commit that to paper because I didn't want that paper to mock me later. That was nuts.
So, what you have to do about that, the fear would be twofold. Now, you tell me which it was. One is that you couldn't get yourself to do the work. The other is that the world would not respond to your efforts. Which one was your concern?
It was more the fear of the world not responding to my efforts.
Yes, got it. So, Stoic philosophy says that you have to define clearly what is within your circle of influence and what is not. If you do what is within your circle of influence, you begin to influence the outside world, but you can't, you have to watch the outside world almost to your peripheral vision. It's like Nope. The monster in Nope was a metaphor for Hollywood, something that eats creativity and shits money, that if you looked at the monster, it would eat you. If you keep your eyes on the path ahead, Just do what it is that is within your control to the limit of your capacity. You're safe. Okay. So that's the difficult thing. It's like if you're driving, in Indy 500, you can turn around and look at the other cars from time to time, but you better spend 99% of your time looking at the road ahead of you or you're going to crash. So
Same
that,
with football, people running, streaking down the field with the ball under their arm. I could often predict when they were about to fall down or get tackled if they were looking over their shoulder to see how close other people were.
and also they have to focus on this down, this action, not worry about what happened in the past, not worry about what's going to happen in the future. Right now, or as Rocky said to Adonis Creed, one round, one step, one punch at a time, one day at a time. When you can clearly define what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Let's say a book, that you want this to be the year that you publish. Okay, what would you need to do to publish? Well, what we say is a story a day, rather one line of story a day, one line, one story every month you are sending out to publish. Okay. Uh, if you're already published, if you've already published at least 5 pieces, and that means somebody sent you money for that. You sent that to an editor. The editor said, yes, I will bet my reputation on you. Here's a check. That is a transaction with a person who knows the game you're trying to learn to play. That's why it's really critical to get that feedback. Once you've sold about 5 stories, 6 stories, 10 stories, it's time for you to start thinking about a book. Stories are where you learn your craft. Books are where you get paid. So go to school, learn your craft, then start moving into that next arena. But it's a chunk at a time. That is going to be a matter of defining the actions you need to do every day and making a commitment to doing it, getting the actions small enough. Ideally, if you're having a hard time getting yourself going, I just don't have the time, I don't have this. You want to determine how much of your failure process, how much of the way you talk yourself out of achieving your goals is emotional and how much is actually structural, how much of it is actually outside world. So if you said one sentence a day. There is no external reason you cannot write one sentence a day. There just isn't. You can do that. Anybody can do that. I see people on social media who will spend an hour arguing with me, if I let them, that they don't have time to write a sentence. That this is what we do to ourselves. It's the fear stops us and finds an excuse. So, in terms of career, sentence a day. Maybe it's making one phone call. In terms of your heart, it's, you know, connecting with your heartbeat, getting a hug that lasts more than 20 seconds. Okay. It might be doing a blessing dance. Every day I do my blessing dance with my beloved wife, recommitting to her, marrying her over again, in essence, telling her that out of all the souls in the world, I choose to walk my life path with you. Period. No exits, not looking for any escape hatches. This is it. And in terms of your body, might be something as small as doing one sun salutation, walking around the block, something small, so small that you know that if you don't do it, it's up to you. It's about you and your fear. So if I was to look at what's going on, I mentioned to Steve Bauer that I keep telling you guys that I'm going to start doing this again from my office. When I got sick, when I died, um, I started camping out in the living room here so I didn't have to move up and down the stairs. Now that that's not a problem anymore, I've gotten a little bit lazy. I kind of like doing it just kind of sitting on the couch. I know I need to go upstairs, but there's so many other things that I think are more important that I have to ask myself, do I need to do that? Or, am I messing with myself? What's going on there? I need to have an opinion about that. Right now, I'm still feeling a little bit, there's just a ton of stuff right in front of me. So in the last week, um, I saw my mentor, Larry Niven, on Monday, and we worked. There's a complex mathematical theory that is at the core of a mystery that I'm doing with him. That's almost finished now, called Sky Babies. The mystery, when it's finished, will fit into a novel called SkyCon about a world science fiction convention that's take place on a dirigible in a world in which dirigibles fulfill the function of luxury liners, and in cruise ships, basically. So the mystery takes place primarily on a dirigible traveling between uh, Los Angeles and Taipei, China. It's like a Russian doll, one mystery that sits inside another mystery, but that the short story also has to or novella also has to work for an anthology of his mystery stories that is a sort of a shared world anthology that we're inviting other writers to. Um, and I made major progress on my next solo novel. Uh, those of you who've been following the story of my novel Sigil know that I've made some massive changes in it. That when I came out of the hospital with a commitment to living every day as honestly as I could, I realized I was not being as honest with that story as I needed to be. That I had tropes that I had seen before, tropes that I had used before, and I'm tired of me. I'm tired of the me that I created to build my career up to this point. What I need to do is ask myself the question, what would little Stevie have written in a perfect world? Where
So
his,
you mean going back to your child writer self, like I did?
that's true. That's true. He's watching me and he knows that I remember, ooh boy, Leo and Diane Dillon are two artists who, whatever art is, they are at the heart of it. They paint together, they painted together, drew together, and where one stopped a line, the other would start. They were just amazing, and they were good friends of Harlan Ellison. And I was going back to New York for something or other, and I thought, let me get together with Leo and Diane Dillon. I'll get some advice about art for my wife at the time who wanted to be a professional artist. And so I met them in Greenwich Village, and we sat there, and halfway through the lunch, I realized I was a liar, that I was sitting in the presence of something special, a glamour, a uh, something just magical. Two souls that produced single works of art that were impeccable, and that I didn't want information for my wife Tony. I wanted to know if the compromises I had made in my career to stay alive, because for 20 years, Octavia Butler and I were the only, she was the only black woman and I was the only black man supporting themselves, writing science fiction in the world as far as we could see. There was nobody else. And I made compromises. She was willing to work at night, you know, counting chicken nuggets or something. I forget what it was, in order to support herself. I was trying to make a living, in Hollywood and in books that would allow me to keep my family alive. And so I did a lot of collaboration that was not necessarily what I would have done had I not needed the protection of two world-class writers, Niven and Pornell. I did things in Hollywood that I would not have done if money were not a desperate need. And I dishonored myself and picked myself up and just kept struggling because I felt like, I had to keep going. I had to pay the bills. I had to pay the bills. I remember Harlan Ellison said that Hollywood is like a mountain of bullshit with a rose at the top. And that by the time you climb that mountain and pluck the rose, you've lost your sense of smell.
Mm.
And I sat there at the table and I started crying. And I realized, I told them what I had done and my fear that I could not find my way back to my heart. And I asked them, tears streaming down my face, is it too late for me? And they looked at each other. And Diane Dillon, with this incredibly kind expression on her face, reached out and took my hands and said, Steve, if you can even ask that question, it's not too late. What I'm saying to all of you is that we've all made compromises. We all have to. But it's not too late as long as you can admit that you want something more. So if I look at this book and I ask myself, what would I have written if my mother had not been terrified that my writing was going to make my life fail? If I had not been told by everyone around me that I couldn't do it, if I was not told over and over again that, well, this is really good. Can we change this character? What was it that the executives of that company said to us, T?
Do the characters have to be black?
Yes. In other words, what they would say to us is, we will back a dump truck of money up to your house if we will let you take your dreams and change them so that they nourish our children instead of yours. It was, and luckily, when that happened, I think we were sitting there with Blair Underwood and Forrest Whitaker, and we looked at each other and we said, yeah, they have to be black. And we walked out and we didn't get the deal. But we kept our honor.
You know what's funny? My mom was a civil rights activist. When I told her that story, she said, those characters don't have to be black. Which is
Get
not
that
true.
money.
It was the good look. If you've read my novel, The Good House, which is about a woman named Marie Toussaint, who is a voodoo practitioner. I think she kind who had had a racialized attack against her family. I think she it kind of they kind of had to be black.
Or you have to kind of say, I'm taking the hit for the next generation. You
I
know,
couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And
I
luckily,
and
Forrest
I am so
Whitaker,
glad.
yeah,
I
Forrest
am
Whitaker was the
so
director,
glad.
so he had
Uh,
the final word, and he was like, "Yeah, they do have to be black." So.
I looked at the book I was planning to write, and I realized that I was following some tropes that I had used to keep me safe, and that I didn't want that. I didn't want that at all. I wanted to write the book that I'd never dared to write. And I wanted to write a book that was, well, to be honest with you, I wanted to write a book that only I could write, that nobody else in the world could write this. I mean, it's part medical techno thriller, part science fiction, part mystery, part badass martial arts, and part commentary on the cost of losing your identity, whether as a people or as an individual. Those of you who have listened to me talk about what it takes to live your life with integrity and still make a good living will see me all over it. It's like every page will be something that Steve has said before, but hopefully not spoken, but acted out. You'll see what it is that I'm up to, but it has to be clever. I have to hide my intent behind. You don't, it's show don't tell. So there is a sequence that takes place in 1942 in the Philippines during the Bataan Death March. And I've been working for weeks on the script that I wrote that that represents that period of time because my process often goes from script to novel. Let me get the script first. Let me see if this works, the dialogue, the characters, the basic situation. Let me not worry about the quality of the prose. Does this work? Okay. When I get that right, when Tananarive told me that she liked that, and I was specifically saying, I want to learn what Tananarive does, and I want to learn it more deeply than I have before, because I've already got my tricks. I've already got the things that I have. But if I want to grow, I have this world-class writer right here. Let me humble myself and ask her what she thinks about this. When she did that, I then dropped that sequence, which is a hallucination. It's a series of dreams that my character is having in the hospital while they're having a coma, while they're trying to recover from having fallen off a roof. Nice, example. I fell off the edge of the world. I'm taking my experience and putting it directly in the book. Hallucinating giant cockroaches and all. You'll see it right there. Uh, so then I had to connect the Manila sequence, the Bataan sequence, the Philippine sequence, with the hospital sequence by showing how visual and auditory images bridged between his experience in the hospital and the dream world. I had to do all that. And then when I had that right, I had to present that to her too. Okay, we got past that too. I also ran it through an AI who was looking at all the historical stuff and everything like this and saying, yeah, that's true, that works. So now I take that and I'm going to drop it into the rest of the book. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to polish that entire book to a high shine up to the moment that my character leaves the hospital. My tendency has been to write loosely through the whole book and then go back and polish. This time I'm going to write loosely up through the time he leaves the hospital and then polish that until Tananarive says, I am ready to move on. I'm going to polish it to her level of shine. And so that's great. That's one thing. Other thing, on Monday, I had a 2 hour martial arts workout via Zoom with my teacher in Manila. And it's I this is
This
my
guy is crazy. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I forget what you had done earlier in the day, but you'd already had a very full day by the time 7 o'clock in the evening rolled around, which is when this lesson was scheduled, and it was 2 hours of constant workout.
yeah, and I survived it. This was only the second time I'd done the 2 full hours. Uh, Other times I had one. The first time I had to stop after an hour. The next time I got to an hour and a half. Then I got to 2 hours just barely. And this time I got in a flow state enough that the first time I looked up and looked at the time, an hour had passed. And I thought to myself, he's back. That's what you look for. Can you get into it enough that you're not thinking about the aches and pains? You're just thinking about this path that you're on.
Meanwhile, I think I was upstairs taking a nap.
Well deserved. Keanu Reeves gets up every morning at least 90 minutes before I get up.
That's
My
true.
body has been needing 9.5, 10 hours of sleep a day. But with the program, so that's all to say that, and then I'm working on the Warrior Walk book, which is, I think, the greatest statement of my philosophy. It started with putting together a routine to heal myself. It was a rehab routine, and I accidentally came across some fascinating things that were healing me so fast that the doctors and rehab people were astonished. They were, what are you doing? This isn't supposed to happen. So because the biggest problem is people actually doing the work, you can have the greatest program in the world, whether it's for writing or relationships, whatever, but if you don't do it, it won't work. I had to add in to it because, they asked me, could you put together something that I could give to our patients? uh, I had to start adding in things that had to do with your emotions and your goals and how to do it, which led to what I want to offer you guys today in the next segment. But I want all of you to get a copy of the book, which you can get at www.warrior-walk.com. And if you cannot afford it, email us, tell us your situation, and we'll send you a free copy.
Can
That is,
I feel obligated almost to jump in here
please.
because you talk a lot about fitness and exercise and I'm there with you for maintenance and I like to look a certain way, but it's only been in recent weeks that I've been more concerned about fitness in terms of health to keep blood sugar low, to keep adding muscle mass, because muscle, as we get older, I mean, for everyone, but especially as you get older, muscle is tied to so many health issues. The more muscle you have, the better your grip, even, there are all kinds of health benefits to these
Or the
things.
grip is actually considered to be the single most important measurement of your overall health,
And
curiously.
independence later in life, right? So I've never, this is all to say, except for just general fitness and I have my own little weight goals, I've never done weight work to try to build muscle so much. And in recent weeks, watching Steve doing the warrior walk, talking about the warrior walk, having read the testimonial from his doctor, actually to encourage people to try it themselves. I'll eventually start doing the things that Steve is doing. That's how I got to kettlebells. That's how I got to yoga, which I love and embrace both of those things. So I said, let me see what this warrior walk is all about. And it's so deceptively simple in some ways. I think I started out like, okay, you do one sun salutation, which you can look up on YouTube videos, like what is a sun salutation? It's a very relatively simple exercise. Um, and also what's called a Turkish get up, which is when you take a weight, even if it's just a sock. Steve was using a sock at one point, like whatever weight is comfortable, and go down on the floor and stand up again and raise it
See,
over your head.
that's the important thing. The realization I had watching the rehab people and watching being in the rehab room in a wheelchair is that 90% of what they were doing was teaching people to get down to the floor and back up safely. Because if you can't do that, you cannot live independently. And I could not do it. I could not. I mean, I couldn't even get out of the hospital bed. But the other thing was walking. So there were two things, ground engagement and walking. And all I did was I built my entire program around the best exercises for those two things. And I almost accidentally came up with a protocol that takes 12 to 15 minutes, two, three
Yeah,
times a
so I
week.
was just describing the sort of the precursor. It's kind of a body warm up. And then the warrior walk is literally just having a weight in each hand, whatever weight you can support. It can be 5 pounds, it can be 10 pounds. I think I started on 15 pounds, rapidly moved up to 20. Now I'm on 25 pounds in each hand. It's hard. But all you do is you walk slowly in a either circle or a square, heel to toe, with enough weight that it takes concentration. If you can do it while you're watching TV or you're thinking about something else, it's not enough weight. Okay. So enough weight that it takes your concentration and you're focused on keeping your balance, during the turns, and then you switch direction. And it was what? The first time I did the warrior walk is 3 sets of what? Like two
It was
minutes?
3 sets of 1 minute.
1 minute, 3 sets of 1 minute. Now I'm up to 3 sets of 2 minutes and 20 seconds. But even so, and there's a minute break in between the sets, which,
So
and,
that means the
and
total amount of time, you start with just doing a sun salutation and the farmer's walk, which is known as one of the very best overall body exercises. It's like taking a stroll under heavy gravity. Your entire body is being taxed proportionally to the way you would move naturally. By the time you can do that and your body is, fully working, that's when you add the Turkish get up. It's not at the beginning. And
okay,
especially if you're the beautiful thing about this program is that it starts with the assumption you can't do anything. It starts with the assumption that you're bedridden. All you can do is visualize yourself doing these things for the time that you're doing it. And then you're twitching your muscles as best you can, and then getting out of bed. And if you can't do a sun salutation, do a chair salutation. You get up out of a chair or you sit in the chair and you move along with it the best you can. It's always about meeting yourself where you are. What I realized was that I'd accidentally created a path that could be followed by anyone all the way to mastery because having three black belts and knowing what my body is when everything is working right, I realized, my God, I'm working on the same levers. Just as you get older or you get sick, stuff breaks down. And because Your emotions drive your actions. Your actions produce your results. Your emotions are created by three things: what you focus on, the language you use to represent reality, and the way you move your body. Specifically, the breathing. Breathing is the control that is used by every profound movement system in the world. You find it in spiritual disciplines, when in meditations and religions and prayers and song. They're controlling your breathing.
Kenny Rosebud. I never finished my story.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Part of it was dovetailing and then it stopped. So I've only been doing this for what, 2 weeks, would you say? Maybe three
Hey,
max.
call it 2.5.
2.5 weeks. No more than twice a week. I've got other things I do. I have my regular workouts, my dance, my walking. So I only do warrior walk twice a week. And I can now say to me definitively, because nothing else has changed in terms of muscle, that the increase of muscle mass, I have a scale that shows me my muscle mass, when I get on it. If you can afford that, that's a great tool. My muscle mass reached 26% for the first time when I first started doing Warrior Walk. And it sustained. I thought maybe that's an anomaly, but it sustained. And now it's steadily climbing. Like this is the second week in a row that it climbed. So 21.1, 21 point, I mean, I'm sorry, 26 point, not 26.1, 26.3. Like I see like, oh, I'm gaining muscle from walking around for a couple minute sets with kettlebell. I'm not lifting them over, I'm just walking. I'm just walking with the kettlebells. And I love Steve's analogy of walking in gravity because, maybe it's my imagination, but I feel like it's improving my balance as well.
It's
Um,
not your imagination. This is why you walk slowly.
yeah.
You're feeling your balance. The mastery. All mastery is progressively moving higher and higher levels of performance to unconscious competence. That's really all it is. You keep doing that, and one of these days you look up and suddenly you can do things you could never have done before, and people will look at you and say, "Oh, you must have been talented." When you when you can do things you couldn't do before, and other people are protecting themselves by saying, "Oh, you must have been talented. You must have had privilege." You know that you're making the right moves because that's what people say when they're not ready to look at the truth that your results in life are a matter of what can you do continuously, day after day, after other people get bored or scared and quit. Every master of piano, they do their scales every day. Tai Chi masters and martial arts, they do their stuff every day. Writers, they write every day. They read every day. Other people want to go out and do something else. The mastery is in persistence. So if you say, I don't have the time, but I'm in pain, or I would like to function at a higher level, and you are willing to spend a half hour a week, we got you. More than that, before you even go there, as soon as, t- sweetheart, did you finish saying what you wanted to say?
I'm done now. I'm just saying I'm really thrilled with the results. And for people who are curious, I had A1C levels, studying the glucose, blood sugar, and diabetes runs in my family. I don't have diabetes, but I saw the impact on people in my family, and I don't want to come anywhere close to having diabetes. So, given that, I said, let me see if I can really, if this is genetics or this is lifestyle. Like if I can control this with lifestyle, let's see what happens if I completely cut out sugar and go low carb, and I'm getting, advice as I go and cookbooks and recipes, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. All the recipes. I put the recipe in chat. Leon and I were chatting, and I put my recipe for my sugar-free oatmeal chocolate chip cookies, which I add coconut to as well. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you're willing to make it yourself, you can have almost anything you want that's sugar-free, low carb. You just can't order it out in the world.
Yeah, we're experimenting with zero sugar or very low sugar ice cream right now. And I want to make a premium ice cream that is no sugar or very, very, very low sugar. And I think I'm close to it enough.
High protein too, which is also
Yeah,
a
and
good
high
for building
protein.
muscle.
That was it.
It's
A
protein.
high protein ice cream that is delicious and virtually no sugar. And I finally have tweaked a recipe that is mighty close. I mean, it really does. I mean, it uses coconut powder. It uses monk fruit for sweetener.
Monk fruit
Uses
is great. A much better alternative than, from what I understand, certainly aspartame, which we all know isn't good for us,
right,
and sucralose
right.
isn't supposed to be that great for
So I
us.
think that it's good enough that I think that we're looking at, okay, let's buy ourselves a real ice cream maker.
I
Something that
mean,
we
and
can
we're
just
having fun. We're having fun. I know it sounds like there's a lot of extreme lifestyle changes going on, but when I talk about the impact of the warrior walk, I'm comparing that to the results I was getting before I was doing the warrior walk,
okay.
right?
And
So,
look, the results are not just about the physical. What I was saying before Tanana reminded me that I'd interrupted her, and I'm sorry about that, sweetheart.
no worries, no worries.
Uh, was that if our emotions are created by our focus, our language, and our breathing, then anything you do that's practicing your breathing under pressure to the point of unconscious competence is teaching you to control your breathing under emotional pressure. Learning how to do it under physical pressure and learning how to do it under emotional pressure are very similar. And if you, the body rules. You know, your biochemistry does control your emotions, but you can control your biochemistry through focus, yes, or you can control it directly through, through exercise, focus, language, all three centers, right? So what I realized was that in 30 minutes a week, if you choose, if you look at it carefully, it's possible to actually put yourself on the path of mastery. More to the point, 5 minutes a day. Now, let me share my screen
And
with
while he's doing that, I just want to make the point that this journey doesn't look the way we often paint it to ourselves. I am the opposite of a gym rat. I hate going to gyms. I don't like other people around me when I'm working out, so that's a fail right there. And I'm not doing that. And I'm not spending 2 hours a day in a single workout or the kinds of extreme things you hear people doing that
you.
don't represent a lifestyle you can actually live, right? Like maybe we could all pretend we're cast in a Marvel movie and do certain things with our bodies over a short period of time, but are you really going to live that way forever? No, you're not. So finding a way that you can actually live, this is what Steve is developing and wants to talk about.
Okay, so what I wanted to do was to build a ritual that if you did it for 5 minutes in the morning, you would be getting your hands on the controls of your life. And I think I've done that. And I would like to bring that into this space. So there are two rituals. One is in the morning and one is in the evening. The morning ritual is when you first wake up, just feel your breathing, okay? And feel gratitude to be alive. And if you want to go deeper, think about one thing you're going to do today to increase your physical energy. You can do all of that in 15 seconds. Two is you move from your breathing to your heartbeat. Feel your heartbeat. You have to get very soft and quiet to feel your heartbeat. And when you feel your heartbeat, you might visualize the child you were, something that you love, but you feel gratitude. And gratitude is a very important thing here for the love in your life. And it could just be your love for yourself. And you think about one goal that you have, something you're going to do today to improve love and relationships by 1%. Once again, you could do all that in 20 seconds. Three, you go to your mind. You give gratitude for the successes you've had, the security you have. You have a roof over your head, food in the refrigerator. You should be giving thanks for it because you'd miss it if you didn't have it. I promise you that. And you think of one goal to move your career or your finances forward. Think about the magic formula, MAGIC, that we talk about, a map or model of what's the formula, what's the recipe for the success you're going to follow, the actions you're going to take, A, the gratitude that you feel, G, your goal, your intention, I, and C is the child elder balance. You want to connect with the child inside you that has all the aliveness, all the creativity, and you want to connect it to your oldest, wisest self. Okay, just visualize. This one might take a minute. Okay, as a minimum to move through these things because you've got morning mind. Sit up, write down the three most important things you're going to accomplish today, and then do one sun salutation, one ground engagement. Go all the way down to the ground, stand up again. This is important because, as I said, if you cannot engage with the ground, if you cannot stand up and get down to the ground and back up again, you can't live by yourself. So it takes no more than, you could do all this easily in 5 minutes. You can get a maximum of 5 points for doing it. Okay. Now, the evening ritual is basically that ritual in reverse, where as you're shutting down, you might do what's called a sunset salutation, where you're doing the movements of a sun salutation. And look this up on YouTube, sun salutation. There are thousands of videos on the subject. And you do it more slowly. You're shutting yourself down for the night. You look at your goals. What did you do today? What was your commitment? Did you do it? If you did, celebrate. If you didn't, learn something. Be a scientist. Perform the experiment. What did I do? What didn't I do? How did I stop myself? I'd suggest that you write down whether you achieved it or didn't. If you didn't achieve it, you think about what reasons, what stopped you, so you can start seeing your patterns. Think about what you're going to do tomorrow. And as you drift off to sleep, imagine what you're going to do tomorrow with your body, your heart, and your head to move your life forward. Again, you can do all this in about 5 minutes, and you could possibly get 5 points here too. So, what I want you to do is those of you who will commit to this, who will try, then the first 5 points you get a day are all you have to get. That 5 points really makes you powerful. 0 points, and you need to do that day over again completely. 1 point, one single point. You do any of these things, you remember any of them, and you get 1 point. The important thing is to avoid zeros at all costs. Make a commit. You're never going to have another 0 day. You're going to, at the very least, wake up, breathe, and feel gratitude. And in the evening, shut yourself down. If you get 1 point, you're keeping your word to yourself. If you get 5 points, you're on the path of mastery. And if you get 7, 8, 9, 10 points in a day, in the last 24 hours, so right now I could say in the last 24 hours, I'd give myself 8.5 points. And I'm willing to say that publicly. And I would like you, when you come to these meetings, if you would be so kind as to put in chat how many points you got either in the last 24 hours or your average in the last week. It is my belief that if you'll track these things in
So,
5 minutes a day,
so the points are for like 1 point for breathing and feeling gratitude,
one
one
point,
point for
yeah,
the heartbeat, meditation, and gratitude.
1 point for gratitude. In other words, 1 point for gratitude for life and remembering something that you're going to do today, that you're
Okay.
going to increase that. 1 point feeling gratitude for the love in your life
Okay.
and thinking about what you're going to do. I trust you on this. Subjectively, you know when you're doing these things and when you're not. 1 point being grateful for what you already have in terms of money, success, security, and one goal to move career forward. That might be I'm going to write at least one sentence today.
That's gonna be the hard one for some people, writing down a goal for the day.
That's right.
But that's an important point. And
And,
then the sun salutation.
and understand something. Even without writing the goals down, you can get 4 points here. And
Yeah.
all you have to do is get 1 point in the evening, and it's easy to win.
3 points are just gratitude. That's easy.
That's
Gratitude
right.
for life,
3 points
gratitude
are
for
just
love,
gratitude.
gratitude for
So,
success.
I would like to kind of find out from people, what do you think about this? And if you post how many points you got in the last 24 hours or the last week in chat. I would suggest that people who've had the highest points ask them questions. How did you do it? You know, that
I'm
let's,
loving the points. We got 6 to 8 points. We got
yay,
7 to 8. That's
there you
awesome.
go. That's it. That's it. You get more than one and you win.
Yes.
That's it. If
There you go.
if you do this,
Let's go.
let's go. You either win or you learn. There's
Time you
no
said an
way to
8. That's
lose
awesome.
if you commit and you commit also to learning. If you set this up so that, okay, if I did this for the rest of 2026, every day I'd be looking at accomplishing my goals. Every night I'd be paying attention to whether or not I did them. I'm taking care of myself. I'm being joyful. I'm filling myself with gratitude. I'm loving the people around me. I'm loving what I'm doing. If you can see how that would make this the best year of your life, join me on this. That way, when we get together, we say, you look, if somebody gets 6, 7 points and you're having trouble getting one, ask them how they do it. Let's develop a culture of warriors, a culture of magicians, a culture of masters. You should be committed to mastering your life, which
You
is
know,
having an unconscious competence, the things that other people struggle to remember. What,
and
Tuesday?
I just wanted to point out how important it is that 3 of those points in the morning, especially, are for gratitude. Because while gratitude seems like such a no-brainer, we're living in some pretty scary and tough times, right? So sometimes it's so easy to just wake up full of anxiety. Anxiety for you personally, or frankly, more and more anxiety for strangers who are battling things that we're not battling, people ramming down doors in Minneapolis and that stuff weighs heavy on people who have empathy, and a lot of creators do have empathy. So I have a cheat, when I wake up every morning and I stare at Steve over there asleep. Shoot, I can remember like yesterday when he wasn't in that bed for a month because of the health crisis he had. So, I mean, I just have to I can still access, oh, I'm just, so grateful for Steve and not look, there have been a couple mornings anxieties have overwhelmed even that, of course. I'm only human, you can't dwell in the past,
But
all that
gratitude is
pesky.
the antidote for fear. It is the
Yeah.
antidote for anger. It is the antidote for anxiety. So if you start your day with gratitude, stuff is going to happen during the day to knock you off center, no question. But if you remember that you have gratitude for what got you here and for what you have right now, it's easier to have faith that tomorrow can be better than today. That it is history, for instance, that stops me from being in despair about America. It's, things rise and fall. That's what it is. Let me just take care of my family. Let me take care of myself, and I will be as ready as I can be. That the Stoics say, control what you can control. Let go of what you cannot. Know what your circle of influence is. And if something is beyond your circle of influence, why are you worried about it?
And it's not to say that we can't make a difference and we can't do things, but you don't need to do it like the minute you open your eyes, right? Like
No,
you
that's the whole thing. That if you think that you need to wake up and uh, immediately look at the news, you are not being good to yourself.
I have a Threads rule because that's basically the new Twitter for me in terms of getting news quickly, and I'm not allowed to look at it. Not allowed to look at it for the first hour of the day, because any random headline might just send me spinning.
So, anyway, what I want to do now is, first of all, is this useful to you? Has this conversation been useful to you? Give us a thumbs up. Hit that so we can see that. This is all about you guys. This is for you. We make this time every week. Okay, good. And by the way, there will not be a Life Writing Live next week. We'll be guests of honor at a convention in North Carolina.
Wait,
And
I'm a guest of honor too?
I think we're both guests of honor. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't signed up for any programming. I hope.
Oh, well, now I guess I'm guest of honor and you get to stay in the room
I
then.
think I'm a plus one, darling.
Oh, well, okay. Well,
You know,
good. That's great. Let's open this now to any questions, comments, or requests you have about anything that's been said or whatever is going on in your lives, right?
there hasn't been said. What do
Yeah,
you
or it
want to
hasn't
talk
been
about
said.
now? Yeah, I'm glad, like Bill said in chat, I'm glad to be a plus one because I get to just chill out. Like I might sign some books if someone, hands one to me,
There you
but
go. So, who's going to put their hand up? Volunteer, or you will be voluntold. There we go.
his hand is
Jay,
up.
I love it.
What? Hey, Che,
Big Jay,
What's up, y'all?
Big Jay.
it's all up,
um,
down, and all around.
First of all, Steven, I like the beard,
Thank you.
looking looking like a sage elder.
Yeah, well, I'm
Um,
entering that period of my life.
yeah, there you have it. I was thinking about, uh, I know that you write, like your sort of like your first pass through something is like a script, like a screenplay, and then
Yeah, it's
you use
partially
it for
because
prose.
it's easier, and partially because the software for scripts is superior to the software for novels.
Yeah, yeah, I think the exact same thing. I was really excited to hear that because I'm like, oh, that's a viable pathway. That's what I
Oh,
like to
hell
do.
yes.
Um, I was wondering, and this is something for both of y'all, like before something is like, I'm going to sit down and write it. Like, what is the earlier process of like how like when you're writing out notes for stuff, or when you're still sort of in the ideation
Okay,
phase?
Tananarive, why don't you give him your approach and then I'll give him mine.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. I actually keep files called story ideas on a Google Doc or for the year 2025, 2026. And that's where I laid the groundwork for the Western short story I wrote, and frankly, just a few notes for a novel I want to start writing the minute I can dig out from under these headlines. Like the baby steps of an outline, which would be, for me, I mean, I'll just look at it and see. What what is it about? Like, okay, yeah, what's a good title maybe? I like to use working titles. Working titles are very helpful for me. That's something from the time you're a kid, whatever you can try to see now, why not try to see it? It just makes it more real. Um, Sort of a hint about who the protagonist might be, thumbnails of like whatever plot elements. For this one, it's kind of overview. It's kind of like I want it to be both sort of a horror novel, but also a crime thriller. Just sort of, and that, whatever I write there, it might be 3 months before I see it again. So I try to give myself like literally enough to go on, right? Like, so it's not just like, oh, it was just getting good. And then, and then I still don't know. Like, as much as I can see, like, what's the central conflict? Like what's his or her job, and then some rough idea of how it might resolve, just so I don't completely leave myself hanging. And that's going to turn into an outline eventually. But right now, it's just maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs of information. And for a short story, it would be even less,
Any
you know.
questions for her? Che?
Say again?
Any questions for her?
Um, no, that's pretty clear.
He's about to kick me off the screen. That's why he's asking.
That's
Okay, go
right. I'm
on,
gonna kick
honey.
you out.
What's yours?
Get out of
That's
here. You're too
yeah,
cute.
that's pretty clear.
You're cute. Okay, so I'm gonna get
Yeah.
her spotlight. Okay, so um, when I was pitching in Hollywood, I would come up with 100 ideas. I would literally just come up with 100 ideas. It'd take me about an hour, and then I would start looking at which of these ideas are original, or feel most original, because, the way to come up with 100 ideas in an hour is to give yourself deliberate permission to write crap. Just like don't even worry about the quality, just an idea. And if you're not worried about looking bad, you can come up with ideas all day long. So, and some of them are going to be good. So I come up with a lot of ideas that I think about stuff. I just kind of naturally think that way. I've trained myself to do that. That creativity is just kind of camping your tent right next to the stream of your dreams.
Hmm.
It's creating a connection between your dream self and your conscious self, but without the adult self saying, that's stupid. You can't make a living with that, you know. So given that, the ideas that are most interesting to me, I will write in my journal. You know, the ideas that are interesting to me that I think, I think I want to do something with that one day. I might put in a dedicated idea file, on OneNote or, I might have sometimes I used to have an idea list in the back of my journal, and I would just write stuff down there. As ideas, like right now, I know what this book is. I know what I'm doing with Larry Niven. I kind of have an idea about what that book's going to be. I'm working this one out. So it would go from an idea on in my journal in the dedicated idea file to let me, and especially if I started wanting to work on this, let me keep a stack of 3x5 cards with a rubber band around it in my pocket. And I write everything that I know about that story. And it may not be much at all. Don't worry about that. Write what you do know and ask yourself questions. I don't know who the lead character is. I don't know what this character wants. I don't know what the moment of greatest stress is going to be. But remember the hero's journey, that roughly you're taking your character on a journey. So you need to know what motivates them, what stops them from taking action, what forces them to take action. In other words, that's, the first step of the hero's journey, the hero is confronted with a challenge. What's the challenge? Initially, they reject it. Okay, what's stopping them? Then they're forced to or allowed to accept the challenge. What motivates them to take action in spite of their fear? They set out on the road of trials. Where do they go? What do they do? Just once again, just write down what you know. You will not know everything. You're not supposed to know everything. Who are the people they will meet along the way? What do they need to learn in order to fulfill this? Or what qualities do they need to pull forth from themselves in order to live? In other words, you look at a Sherlock Holmes story. The Holmes quality is vast knowledge within a narrow range. He's dogged once he engages. When he doesn't engage, he sits around in a cocaine stupor. Um, he has tremendous physical courage, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the allies and powers, right? And if you don't know, I don't know how he's going to solve this. Jesus Christ. If you write a story, but this character must defeat Godzilla. Holy crap. How do I even begin to write that story? Well, he's going to have to learn a lot, isn't he? And he's going to have to make allies like crazy. Maybe he's going to ring in Gamera. Maybe he's going to need Mothra. Mothra is Godzilla's babe. So, get this. So, what is he going to need? What is the moment of greatest stress? The dark night of the soul, right? You encounter evil and you are defeated. What is the leap of faith? What is the pit of despair? At his deepest moment of despair, what is he saying and thinking? In Die Hard, it was, John McClane saying, if you see my wife, tell her that she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me, just before he figures out the problem. Because that's what happens. The greatest moment of despair happens just before the breakthrough. It's always darkest before the dawn. This is the pattern of story. If you know these things and what he wins, great victory at great price, then write that story. By the time you've written a dozen stories, you're ready to completely break the mold. You're ready to forget story pattern as, you're not doing finger exercises on the piano keyboard anymore. You're doing music, and music is not scales. Music is playing scales out of order with different rhythms and different tempos and different intensities. That's music. So the music of writing, I'm just so excited about it. The music of writing is understanding the scales. The hero's journey is your scales. Writing is playing the scales with different tempos, with different levels of emphasis, out of order, skipping things, forcing the reader's mind to think, well, why didn't he do this? Why didn't this happen? You are ahead of the reader because you understand the territory, not just of your story, but of the reader's mind when they react to stories. You get it? And so if you keep, there are other things that I do, but if you will just keep a 3x5 a stack of 3x5 cards, carry them with you, write down what you can think of about it, and the questions that you have are the areas you don't know. Now, trust that your unconscious mind, while you are sleeping, will give you answers. And your evening ritual, look at one of those cards. I need an answer for this. Then put it away. Go to sleep. In the morning, you'll have an answer in all likelihood. You'll wake up and suddenly say, "Oh God, it's stupid simple." Their high school friend used to be a chemist. Christ, why didn't I remember that? See what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Next up,
That was actually a sermon. I can't help being a little evil. Oh, I can't help being a little evil because I remember one of the best actual sermons I ever heard was from a Yale trained minister who gave a whole sermon about how, yes, they say it's always darkest before the dawn, but sometimes it's just darkest before it stays darker still. I mean, it was I mean, it was just fascinating though. I mean, and he managed to make it not that depressing. I don't know what it was.
well,
Anyway, sorry.
in a horror anthology, I would expect that a certain number of those stories are not going to end happy. And so in there, it's not that it's darkest before disaster. In order to make that story work, you have to give the reader hope
Oh, absolutely.
and then yank it away from them.
My favorite thing is with Breaking Bad. You could always tell if someone's shot was gonna die if they were staring at a beautiful flower or a beautiful sunset. And I always appreciated that because I feel like that's real though. I think that in life, you know how our elders want so much to be remembered and they feel so good sometimes about giving you a recipe or they feel so good about giving you something of value to them. That's their way of sort of coming to peace with the fact that they know they're dying, right? And you know, if you're aware, even if you don't want the thing that much, you take it because you get that's what they're doing, and you're going to do the same thing one day. So yeah, give people some grace and some room to accept what's happening to them, and and we do cling to whatever we can find that's beautiful or hopeful, like Liam Neeson's eyes at the end of The Gray, right? If you've seen The Gray, I love The Gray. I might rewatch that today.
Hey, we can do that.
It's about the look in his eyes. That is what we strive for in this life, is that bring it. Bring it then. I'm ready for you. Bring it. And one day we say that to death. Or maybe not in such a mean way even. Like, yeah,
Well, I
thank
think
you.
that
Yeah, finally.
that is that is a yang approach. The yin approach might be Michelle Yeoh in the movie Sunlight, or yeah, I think it's Sunlight by Danny Boyle, where the spaceship is trying
Oh
to save the sun,
yeah. That's another
and the
one.
ship is
Sunshine. Sunshine, Chase said.
sunshine. Okay, uh, one character knows that they're about to die, and so they deliberately go to where they can find a flower, and they sit, and Michelle Yeoh sits and focuses on the flower as her last
Yeah.
moments come. She has decided this is how I will die.
Yeah,
Liam
you decide.
decided I will die being who I am. Fierce. Bring it. Lots of different choices. Remember what I said about how our state of mind is determined by what we focus on? There you go. There you go.
And humanity in the history of humanity, there are innumerable examples, just infinite examples of people who have to make their peace and find a way to make their peace. I mean, I think we see the stories about the people who are not at peace, but
That's true. Okay,
trust me.
let's see if we got any more questions. Was Jaime raising his hand? Was who?
Not today.
Okay,
Great to see everyone.
let's take a
Good to
look. How
see you,
about
Jaime.
Jade?
Okay, Jay.
That's
Hey
great.
guys,
I looked at Jade, and before I could say it, she put her hand up. That I love that.
all right, synchrony. Here's my question for you.
Yeah.
I'm working on a ghost story, a monster in the house, and I
Ooh.
wanted to know, do you guys have any pet peeves specifically for ghost stories, monster in the house stories? Are there things that you see done that you're kind of like, Oh my God, I'm so sick of seeing that, or I hate when that device is used that
I will
way.
turn you over to our horror expert.
Oh no, I mean that. Hey Jay, first of all, I don't know any much more about your story, but I already love it. It's my jam. And I think for horror writers, part of the appeal is that we've seen these things before, right? And there's a fine line. There's a fine line because there are some things that are going to happen in every outdoor survival horror story,
Yeah.
right? Like somehow they're going to end up isolated. They're probably camping. Maybe the car broke down. And I think there are things that we all understand about genre stories that have these elements in common. That's kind of the carrier tone that keeps us intrigued. What I try to do is take territory that has been well trod and put my own twist on it, right? So for my novel, The Good House, I know it presents as a haunted house novel. It's called The Good House. It has a picture of a house on the cover, at least in the original cover, but it's actually a demon possession story.
It is.
And so blending those two things was kind of my way of putting a different kind of a stank on it. I think a lot of ghost stories, the real bang for the buck lies with what is the history that created the ghost. And I don't mean necessarily that there's a big scene where the ghost reveals that history, or even that everybody in your story knows that history, but the more you know about that history, I think you're really set. That's the thing that every writer can bring that's unique, right? So retribution, that's very common. Maybe it's something that's a little more complex than just plain retribution, or maybe it's complicated retribution. I think sometimes if you complicate that, that gives it more of an air of uniqueness. A protagonist who's kind of messy and not always unlikable. I mean, we've seen it a million times, but at the same time, it gives us someone who is just a little bit more complex than
Yeah.
maybe the last protagonist they read. Because the
Okay.
protagonist brings a lot to that story too. And that's the thing that's unique about you, is that protagonist you create, as long as you're creating that protagonist out of things you experience and feel and see, and not just things you've read, and definitely not things you've seen in TV and movies. That would be my pet peeve if you ask me.
Hmm.
It would be writing based primarily on inspiration from movies or TV. My writing prose, if it's prose. Because while I think movies and TV are great, I think they're also much more derivative than the average novel. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that to build on what Tananarive said, you want to research your subject. If your book is about ghosts, your story is about ghosts. I don't want you writing a book until you've sold a couple stories. Um, what are ghosts? What do you think about that? If you got your concept of ghosts from watching movies, you got a problem,
Hmm.
okay? Because at the very least, if you get your concept from movies, then you have to go meta. You have to be making a comment on the way ghosts are presented in movies. If you want to do something that speaks to you, it has to speak to your sense of what do I think ghosts are? What does my religion think ghosts are? What does my culture think ghosts are? What is something about ghosts I have never seen anyone say before? I I took the position that I would research a subject until I came up with a concept that I'd never heard anyone else offer. When it came to when I was writing Great Sky Woman, it took place, 100,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago in East Africa, early humans. And I decided that there was no way for me to spend 5 years studying anthropology. Let me study until I come up with a concept that I've never heard anyone else say, that an expert in the field would say, that's a good thought. And so I did. And I studied and studied and studied until I came up with the concept that the difference between human beings and animals, and a lot of people have said that, is that humans are the creature that make and use fire as a tool. That's the only difference. And I just, hypothesis. Could I support that hypothesis? I wrote my reasoning. Then I sent it to John Wagner, who's the head of the anthropology department at the University of Kentucky, who I met when I was in Tanzania doing my field research. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous. Then, about 5 weeks later, I got a letter from him saying, Steve, you'd never guess this. I just came back from a conference in which a major paper was presented to exactly that point. And I
Oops.
knew I was ready to start my book. So you have something about ghosts. Maybe you're not going to say it directly.
And you don't have to go to an anthropologist to find it, although that's what
So
Steve
you
did.
probably do want to talk to people who believe in ghosts and say they've had ghost encounters.
I mean, in fact, Bill in chat has a couple stories he's already telling. But I would also say in any horror story, whether it's ghosts, demons, creatures, go to the heart of what scares you. That's where your real gold is.
Yeah, if it's because you said it's horror. A ghost story does not have to be horror. A ghost story could be a romance. The Ghost
True.
is Mirror. It could be a comedy. It could be Ghostbusters. It could be inspiring. It could be anything. It could be spiritual. You get to decide. If it's horror, then the dominating emotion, the dominating definition of horror that we use around here is it's a story designed to generate fear. You
Yeah.
want your readers to be afraid, which means that your characters have to be afraid. So you have to have something to say that you express in action that would generate fear in any reasonable human being.
And sometimes family history, things in family history people don't like to talk about. You can maybe fictionalize it so that they don't all get mad at you. I've done
That's
that a
right.
couple times.
That's the best.
Although my most powerful novel to date, The Reformatory, was based directly on family history. So that is a powerful tool for you as the author, is claiming that heritage and bringing some aspect of the past to life. And it doesn't have to be racially motivated. It could be family drama, like Eve's Bayou, the Casey Lemons movie. But whatever it is, it should be something sharp, something painful, something scary, that is worthy of transcending time and space to get
And
its
worthy of
resolution.
spending your time.
Yeah.
You are asking the reader to invest their time, and you're asking an editor to risk their reputation and send you money. Once you understand that you are not creating in a vacuum, that there is an audience to be reached, and that you want, when they put the story down, you want them to feel a particular way. It transforms things. And of course, what you want is to get to the point where you have that in unconscious competence so you can now just write what you feel like writing, and it's automatically what people want to read. Stephen King did his adjustments in that sense very early in his career. After that, it was just, let me write what I feel like writing. Okay.
I am amazed by these ghost stories popping up in chat. Like, it reminds me of a time I was on a panel of scholars, and it had been a very dry panel. And then I asked, had anyone ever had a prophetic dream? And everybody on that panel had the most incredible prophetic dream story I'd ever heard. And it's kind of like happening in chat right now. I wrote entire sequences of the living blood on less information than some of what's popping up in chat about ghost encounters. I mean, I kind of feel cheated. I've never had one, but on the other hand, someone once told me if I had, I might not want to write about it. So I guess I did
Yeah.
write
Well,
about
you borrowed something that I experienced. Uh,
Yes, yes, I
because and
did.
I basically said, I don't know what was happening in this experience, but I'm in the bizarre position where the easiest explanation is it was supernatural.
Yeah, yeah, it's
The
crazy. Yeah.
non-supernatural explanations are so complicated and so unlikely that I decided that I had asked, for years, I'd asked the universe, I said, I would go anywhere, do anything, pay any price to see the spiritual equivalent of a cigarette ash burning backwards to make a lucky strike. Show me something that cannot be explained with physics. after I went through a particular experience, I said to the universe, I was just kidding. I don't I don't want to get any closer than this. Whatever is true, this is as close as I ever want to come. I take it back. You don't have to show me anything. Anyway,
Anyway, I hope we haven't overwhelmed you with our reminiscing, Jade.
does
But
that
you got
does
us
that help
excited
you
with
with
your.
help answer your question?
It was amazing, yes. And I think the
Okay,
last
good.
question, can I just really quickly, is it an overdone trope to have the psychic show up to give background on the ghost? Whether it's like the movie Ghost of Whoopi Goldberg saying, "Oh, you in trouble, girl," or like, do you know what I mean? Like,
No, you
to
need that, but you have to find a unique way to do it. And it's better if the character seeks out an expert than if the person expert just shows up.
Yeah, just
If your
showing up
story is
is a
about the
little.
that
person
I
with
that
agency.
I know, but I guess I'm thinking like in The Shining, Stephen King does it with Jack up in the attic discovering the clippings about, Derwent and the
Yeah.
history of the hotel and all of that. So it made me wonder, is that an overdone thing where the character goes out and seeks some kind of supernatural assistance? Should
Think
there be another device
think
that
about
should be used?
That
hopefully
depends on your character, I think. I think those kinds of decisions really do grow out of who your protagonist is and the choices they would make as this journey is unfolding. Some people are themselves researchers. Some people rely upon guidance from other people. Um, so yeah.
Okay.
and I would suggest make a list of let's say five of your favorite movies where that happened or favorite books where that happened and write down a couple sentences about how they did it. How did the writer negotiate that? In this
Yeah.
case, it was a family legend. In this case, they went to a professor at a university. In this case, they had a vision. In this
Yes.
case, a psychic came and said something to I had a vision that you were in trouble. In the next case, they overhear something in a restaurant. In another case, they remember something that happened to them in childhood, or somebody explains something. In another case, they go to the hospital and a dying relative in a moment of rare moment of clarity blurts something out that they never said before. There are infinite ways to do it.
And
Think
remember, the world is full of amateur detectives, whether it's the neighbor who is the self-described, storyteller of the neighborhood, or people who want to write a book, and or people who were reporters, or I mean, so you have a lot of options.
and
Okay.
one option that I really like is the person gives you the information or offers an opinion and it's wrong, but it leads them to the right answer.
That's cute. Yeah, if you can
Yes.
find just little twists along the way, the one thing to look out for is tropes. If I had an MFA student turn in a story and all of a sudden an indigenous character popped up, I was like, this isn't just to impart information, I hope. And sometimes, like in The Good House, and I researched that quite a bit, but there was almost no way to sort of get around this idea of kind of a trope, dealing with the trope with voodoo and Vodun. So you give characters investment in the story. No one should. Oh my gosh, there's a writer. I forget who it was right now who had a great standard for side characters in his books, as if this was a script, would actors kill to get this part? So someone who just shows up because they're a spiritual guide, that's not a part you kill to get. But someone who shows up and they're a spiritual guide because they have some kind of shared concern, or they may not even be related concerns, but it's like, I need help with this, you need help with that, or some reason they're doing it. It becomes tropey when they become magical and spiritual guides just for the sake of that, and that is
Right.
definitely something you want to look out for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we have it is now 1:30 in our local time, and it's time for us to for me to ask Tananari, do you have
How
closing comments?
I'm still looking at these stories popping up in chat saying, how am I the only person who has not had these experiences? When people are having their homes cleansed and they've got poltergeist going from location to location with them, which was what I did in Joplin's Ghost, but I had never known anybody who'd had that experience when I wrote that. I mean, what? I mean, okay. I had one dream that maybe could have been a visit, but you all are like way ahead of me in terms of your experiences with these the other realms, okay? But yes, it is time to wrap up. Everyone have a great weekend. As a matter of fact, go out and make yourself the hero or heroine in your own story.
The hero in the adventure of your lifetime. Now unmute yourselves, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye and high five one another.
See you, everybody. Thank
High five,
you.
high five,
Great
high five.
session.
everyone.
All right.
Namaste.
Take care. See
Have
you.
a great
Remember,
weekend.
we won't be here next Friday. We'll be here the Friday after. Okay. Bye bye.
Rosebud.